Let's get together to co-create a breakthrough for freedom of energy, sustenance, healing, and regeneration of the human vessel. Welcome to FESIG, the Free Energy Special Interest Group, where science meets spirituality in the quest for truth and knowledge to free humanity and transform this planet into a paradise.
Hi everyone, this is Crystal, and I have Pontus here with me, and Press, and the team, our R&D team members, and we've got a very special speaker, Michael Lee Hill, and this is the second part of the first part that he just delivered to us on the technology stuff and all that. So the second part, we will focus more on the ET side of things, the ACIO, the NSA, the Liberating group, the SSP, technologies and beyond. So it's going to be a very interesting session, as this is the Q&A session. So I think you can put your hand up if you've got an important question for Michael. Well, let's make it more casual. Okay, so thank you, Pontus, for sharing the intro ident. And now I am going to just show very quickly. This is our 94th meeting. Okay, just in case you are not sure what's happening here, our 94th meeting. So we had I'm just showing the agenda here. Oops. Okay. So I'm sharing screen now. Everybody can see, right? The first session, Michael Lee Hill, the late A.R. Gordon's protege, talking about the 432 Hertz magic and lost history and knowledge. So there you go. So that just finished, and we're gonna go into the Q&A session. This is the second part. We can't go over the 2-hour recording, so we're doing a second part separately. And then after that, just hang on there and stay on for the second session where John Kane will be speaking on the Merkaba geometry and thinking outside the dodecahedron box. Okay, so right. Okay, I'm gonna stop sharing screen. It's a bit hard to, yeah. Have I stopped sharing? Yeah, I did. Yeah, okay. So I don't think I should do the bio again. Everybody knows Michael Lee Hill, the famous Michael Lee Hill. I urge all of the viewers to look up the first part, okay, because his bio is properly introduced there before we get him on. Now we are running short of time, so we got to get Michael Lee up here. Thank you, Michael. Over to you. Take up the microphone and continue.
Well, thank you. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Our honor. Right, so we were talking about the ACIO just now, and I reckon that this interesting topic is going to run on a bit, so we have to do a second part. So this is the second part, and I was introducing the subject on the second part by relating the story of how Michael got into becoming A.R. Gordon, the director of the ACIO's protege. And apparently Michael is his favorite protege, the best student he's got. So there are a lot of questions for you, Michael. It's so fascinating. Michael began talking about how he read the manuscript of the Wingmakers, which I had as well in 1998 when it first came out, right? That was the year, wasn't it? And it was like so mind-blowing. It's kind of like, wow, the Wingmakers came from a far distant futuristic existence, like 750 years ahead in the future, and they come here to the past to implant some artifacts, some materials for us to discover so we can remember who we are. Isn't that so, Michael? So over to you, Michael, to tell the story.
One of them was Chaco Canyon, and that's where one of the remote viewers, for the NSA, they were looking into these artifacts, and it began communicating with her, and it led them to Chaco Canyon, where they called it an ancient arrow site. and it's truly almost like an ancient Sumerian time capsule. And it went down into the ground in a spiral like DNA, and there's 24 chambers that represented the 24 chromosomes, but we only have 23. It's interesting, in the ancient era, the only way to get to the 24th chamber was you got to enter the 23rd, and then there's a little tunnel that led to the 24th. You couldn't get to it without going through the 23rd. But that's where in each chamber there was artwork, a crystal that contained actual sound files of indigenous instruments that they were involved with when they intermingled into different cultures. Like it's known, like the Anasazi of Chaco Canyon said they had met these wingmaker beings. By the way, the wingmakers, truly you could consider them the Elohim or the Pleiadians. It's all one and the same. But so as the story goes, this started unfolding a lot of information for this NSA. Matter of fact, Crystal, you had a wonderful chart of the NSA with, the ACI, where it is, and Labyrinth Group. Maybe you should show that. It might clear up some things.
Right.
But
Thank you.
the most secretive division of the NSA was called the Alien Contact Interface Organization. And this is where the reverse engineering from technology from those that are not from here was happening. But AR told me the ACIO was truly only where the research and development was happening. And the Labyrinth group was the most secretive division. And that's where there was feet on the ground, where Anunnaki were coming into underground bases and helping us understand technology like light encoded reality matrix, LERM, or
Now, if I may insert this, Michael, all the ETs who are coming to our planet Earth, the first person they would contact would be AR, right? Because he's the most intelligent, considered as the most intelligent human being on Earth.
Yes,
yeah.
He was the first one that implemented and used the Anunnaki technology called accelerated intelligence. By the way, the same intelligence software was used on myself and the team. And it's not for the meek, man. It made one person in a team go insane, because truly it said that our human waking state consciousness is only taking in about 27 frames of information a second out of all of our five senses. Said you can prove this to yourself by bringing out a strobe light. When it gets to about 27 flashes per second, it goes solid white. It's not solid white, it's still flashing. It's just we can't perceive it as anything faster. But our consciousness is taking in millions of bits of information from our surroundings and everything, and it is encoded within our consciousness. That's why hypnosis works. It can access these different parts of our brain that has this information. But so the normal human is perceiving their world from 27 frames of information per second through their five senses. What if that governor was removed? And now the human psyche, the waking state of consciousness, had all of the unconsciousness pool of information. It's almost like as needed, because if the brain was just flooded with that information, it would probably destroy you. But it comes as needed. But here's the deal. All of your shadow work, all the things that wounded you as a child, and the things that you really don't want to process are also down there in that pool of unconsciousness. So when all of a sudden that governor is removed from your waking state consciousness, all of that darkness, it's not easy to get through. It's custom tailored to your own stuff. And I know when it entered our group, and I've seen what it did. And what I was told by one of the insiders is the specific woman handled it the worst. she came from a military upbringing and had a very compartmentalized mind to begin with because of her military upbringing. And it caused her to start seeing shadow everywhere. She's seen enemies where there wasn't enemies. She's seen things coming out, and it caused her to go insane. My partner in the group handled it the best. He's a fantastic dude. Just so you know what I'm talking about. This is far down the path, by the way. AR finally put together a 7-person team. He was the 7th. And it was specifically a group of Nephilim that were tasked to be able to contact the incoming Anunnaki for help on things that were happening. So there was 3 2-member teams. I had a member, another person had a team member, another person had a team member. Then AR was what was called the wave guide. By the way, it was interesting because all these 3 people over the United States formed a Merkaba. Like if you just put the dot where we were, and then him in the middle, it was a Merkaba shape. And his task was, he said, again, like we're saying, the mental energy isn't that great. You know what I mean? It's a low signal, but just like a microphone, you can have the diaphragm that's getting a very little signal, but then I think it's called a transducer within the microphone, amplifies the signal so it can be sent out a microphone cable to your computer or a PA system or whatever. In the same way, he would take our mental energy, and specifically we can get into what that mission was, because we went up against the transhumanists who had a depopulation agenda. We're talking about the Georgia Guidestone people, and we threw a monkey wrench into their fold and stopped their plans of depopulation in 2012. But that's the last time I talked to AR. He said, well, our mission was successful. We've saved millions of lives, but we've pissed off the wrong people. They're really pissed because they wanted us to perish. They had their plans to go into their little underground bunkers. Once the smoke had cleared and the water had subsided, they could come out and take over their little utopia without us having to worry about. Because the problem is they didn't feel they could implement unlimited free energy on this planet with normal humans here, because we would misuse it.
Yeah.
And that's simple. But
I have a question, Michael. Okay, so the Liberating group has developed very advanced technologies to use, right?
Yes.
But unfortunately, why isn't it being used to prevent what's going on right now, like the extinction of the Homo sapiens sapien now that is going on? Why hasn't it been used to stop what's coming?
They told me that actually America is, when you really look into the meaning of America, it's the land of the plumed serpent. And it was the end of, like, we need to go back in time now before we even get into this and talk about, well, why is all this happening, and why is human mental energy being accelerated in an unbiased fashion? And that is because, like you said, Enlil's side of the family was going to let us perish during the deluge, which was 27,000 years ago. And being myself was half Pleiadian, the first time that a hybrid was brought into the Anunnaki bloodline. And instead of following my brother, the king, instruction to take the fish out of the oceans, it's like, why even keep the fish here? We'll take it, because they knew a pole shift was coming. And it wasn't, they didn't create it, but they knew look into The Path of the Pole by Charles Hapgood, and the forward is by Einstein. It's like, it's just physics, man. The Earth is off axis, and when these ice caps reach maturity, it fractures the rock, turns it into a lubricant, and it just relocates to the equator. It's happened many times. They said they knew it was going to happen, but Enlil's like, don't tell the people. We don't need panic, but remove the fish. why save the fish for them when they're going to perish anyhow? And we can send it back to Nibiru. And so I'm going to talk about this in first person. I went out to do it and I couldn't find myself to do it. I looked at mankind as family because I had intertwined my own genetics into Homo sapien to give us a head start, because we'll just leave it at that. Like I said, I'm trying to keep this in a nutshell. So instead of doing what my brother wished, I went to my Pleiadian side and went to my mother and said, isn't there anything that can be done? My brother is that side of the family is gonna let mankind perish without
Okay,
lifting
hang
his
on.
finger.
Sorry, I have to interject here. Enki is talking about Enlil, his brother. Okay,
Yes.
and we know that Enki is on the humanity side. He's really a good person. He loves us humans, and his brother Enlil is the exact opposite. So says ML here, who
I
is
gotta
here.
say though, that's absolutely true. But jumping into the future, me and my brother are now much brotherly love is flowing. And he said, some of the past times we met, it wasn't pleasant, but now I understand you were only showing me my own darkness. I showed him humanity is more than slave labor by representing mankind before the council, which meant memory blocks, which meant incarnating into the human form and not coming from any higher frequency than a normal human, and not being succumbed by the dark programming and Illuminati mind control. And because if one of us can do it, any of us can do it. And I did it by getting the shit beat out of me, you know what I mean? But anyhow, going back there, they said, I brought up the idea of the ark, and it's almost metaphor. That's a little bit much to get into, but they said the Pleiadians, using their ability to look into the future, seeing that we didn't have enough time before the end of the age of Pisces and into the age of Aquarius, right? 2016, as we said in the previous show. And they said, it looks in 99 out of 100, looking into the future, ending of these timelines, mankind perished because we evolved technologically faster than we evolved spiritually, and we would just aim our weapons at ourselves and each other, and we would destroy ourselves. So the Pleiadians was like, well, why even do this experiment to save them and create this digital arc library of DNA if they're just going to destroy themselves anyhow? Because like I was saying, at the end of this, it was America, and we're going to give humans a chance of freedom, and all sides go to the sidelines, and we'll see what they do with this new, not done very well, by the way, obviously, but just enough to scrape by. So they had to go back to the table, and not only that, they said, well, what if we made mankind experience their own mental energy in an accelerated fashion, unbiasedly? Whatever you put out, if it's fear, you get back fear tenfold. If you put out love, you get back love tenfold, unbiasedly. Theoretically, that should, if you got darkness and we needed to transmute the mass consciousness's shadow at an accelerated rate, that should make us evolve faster on a consciousness level. But the Pleiadians said, well, you just can't do that. It's never been tried before to erase this upcoming race to try to help them. You can't do that unless you're willing to go and walk a mile in their moccasins and incarnate and try to, steer it from the inside. So us on the Inky side tried, because obviously my brother was not real interested. And that's when we found out that if we tried to incarnate into the human form, we would spontaneously combust, because the human vessel is not capable of handling the energetics of an Elohim, being. So then they had to go back to the table. Well, what if we created this virus that we could put into the human genome and create this higher pool of chi or prana available on a cellular level? Maybe that could do it, and it has. That was the creation of the Nephilim bloodline. So what had happened was, instead of me following orders, I went to my mother's side, came up with this plan of saving humanity, which came through an individual named Galzu. And Galzu is not Anunnaki, he was Pleiadian. And when Galzu came, Anu was the king of Nibiru. And then the two brothers, myself and Enlil, we would sit and take counsel, and we didn't view ourselves as gods. Everyone, maybe humans did, but we didn't. We knew that there was higher intelligences on the cosmic totem pole. And when Galzu came, we listened, and you'll find it was Galzu that gave Inky the dimensions, how to create the ark, and the idea of accelerated intelligence acceleration, and pulling the strings behind the scenes. Galzu did. But what had happened was, after the pole shift, well, I got to back up. Once I didn't remove the fish, when I went back, my brother brought me into the council and berated me. How dare you? Why is the fish still there? I'm the king. I could behead you. You disobeyed a direct order. And they said my response was startling, that I just burst out into a belly laugh and was like, and walked out of the room, and they're like, what the hell happened to Icky? Because I knew that this plan was already in play. And I almost look at that as my ascension out of that. By the way, this is all encoded into Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, if you remember. One of them have left the council, and they were not nearly as strong with a missing member until that member returned. And we were returned now. But anyhow, so this started this experiment to accelerate human conscious evolution, to help mankind by us experiencing our own mental energy in an accelerated fashion. But if you're doing this, wouldn't you want some type of council, some type of team that's seeing how the experiment's going, So the council, if you read the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, the Atlantean, he calls it the 7 Lords of Light and the 7 Lords of Darkness. And Yahweh, or Enlil, was the only one who sat directly in the middle and held a seat on both sides. When I met him in this lifetime, he said, Michael, I'm the only one who sits between the council of 7 light, 7 dark. I'm the only one who holds a seat on both sides. And because of that, I have to offer any initiate both sides of the coin. I have to ask them if they want a blood sacrifice, while hoping to God they don't. Well, he said most humans have chosen the dark path. To the point I said, has anybody, because he said, you're in the most compassionate version of this. I was taken into a ceremony that the council was present, and they were vetting people. And he said, this is the most compassionate version of this. And to the Native American Indians, they call it a Sundance. He said, at this one you're at, it's a 4-day event. He said, no one doesn't make it. That if someone collapses from not eating or not drinking for 4 days, you have someone there to fan them down with a feather and offer them a drink. He said, no one doesn't make it here, and there's not that much suffering, even though there's a lot of adults choosing to do stupid shit to themselves, like pierce and the flesh and whatnot. But he said, right now we have 6 other Sundances happening simultaneously on this planet. And each one gets progressively darker and more suffering. He said, if you're at a version 3, we have over 500 people dancing. And if someone collapses there, you don't get help. You get stampeded and people die. And if you make it all the way to the end, it's Abraham in the Bible, they'll ask you, will you sacrifice your son, to show how much you love Creator? And that's truly what I was told. This is the dark side. The dark side is there to prove to the king that any human will give their I am. to give their energy away to an illusionary outside source. Because if you do, you're not ready for higher realms of consciousness where thought is manifested instantly. If you got those kind of thought forms, you're not ready, you know? So it's their job to prove and test every initiate that comes before. They'll dangle dark carrots in front of you to see if you'll take the bait. And then they can go, see, not ready. The flip side of that is the 7 Lords of Light. And the Native American Indians called this council, by the way, the 7 war chiefs and the 7 peace chiefs. And they considered Chief Yahweh the one that sat in between these councils. And it was the only one who held a seat on both sides. See what I'm saying? Because I learned that, and the Cherokee and the Iroquois knew of Chief Yahweh long before the Bible. So when I found this out, because I was invited to a Sundance, as I was saying, and when I said I will not participate in these flesh and blood sacrifice ceremonies, no thank you. He looked at me, he said, Spirit is so glad you didn't enter their territory, because Spirit looks at anyone who participates in these flesh and blood sacrifice ceremonies as prostitute. That was his own words to me. But he didn't tell me who he was. He just said, I sit in the middle. So when I found out this Chief Yahweh sat in the middle of these 2 councils of war and peace chiefs, then the next time I seen him, I said, Chief, Spirit's led me to the understanding that you are my brother. You are Enlil, Yahweh. He said, yes, I've done some pretty messed up things. And I said, well, haven't we all? And he said, but no one knows who Enlil or Yahweh is anymore anyhow. So I just go by Chief. I said, okay. But getting back to this, the 7 Lords of Light are going to test any initiate to see what kind of love and compassion you bring to any suffering that comes your way. It's the total flip of the dark. The dark's going to see if they can get you to give your energy away and suffer. He said it's all about self-inflicted suffering brought about by your own free will. Once you say no, the dark can't touch you. He said you've invoked spiritual cosmic free will then. And just like King Solomon, when he went through this trial and he got through this gate, the dark had to do his bidding and no longer had sway over this for that time period. But you got to know, we'll get back to that. What I found out is it goes through light and day. There's very long periods of time. And in the Mayan calendar, they're called them days of light and days of darkness. And in these Michigan artifacts I was talking about, they call this individual the Dark Messiah. And I met him, and I'm talking in person. And he came to me on the night of the second night, and he said, I had a dream and it had everything to do with you. And when a dream is actually realized in the real world, it's reenacted at a Sundance, and we're reenacting your dream tomorrow. And I said, what are you talking about? What? He said, I can't tell you, that would take away from the energy. So that night is when I went to my brother and said, I will not participate in this. And he said, hallelujah. And, I asked him, has anyone else turned around, started to go down the dark path? Because just because you've been invited to the most compassionate level, sooner or later, you're going to be invited to a 3 or a 4. And sooner or later, you're going to be asked if you want to make puppy soup. That is as horrible is what it sounds like, by the dark, to see if you're that, and I have a problem with that too. I'm like, that's not right, even for the dark to be able to use an innocent life form. They administered a puppy test to myself with a rescue dog, and I'm like, no, I don't care what you're telling me, what promises you're making me of this kingdom that's coming, but you can get another dog, let that one die. I'm like, no. And the minute I would not, the radio came on, and it was just my imagination running away with me. It was on the radio. I'm like, all right, I get it. But they administer puppy tests to initiates, the dark does. So it gets to the next day, and I'd already told Chief I wouldn't participate. And he looks at me and said, Michael, if you enter their territory, you're going to be laying on the ground crying out for your mama. You're going to have your thumb in your mouth, sucking your thumb. You'll have the cleanest thumb of anybody in this whole place. And it sent chills down my spine. I was like, why is he saying this to me? I already told him I will not participate. What I didn't know that he did was this dream that the Dark Messiah had was one of my friends collapsed during sun dancing for the first time. And that brought me into the circle to throw him over my shoulder and take me to the hospital. Well, the rules are, if you enter that circle, you know this is the area that you've given your own I am and energy away to some higher form. And if I would have, anyone that enters that circle, if the Dark Messiah goes, that person gets pierced. I would have ended up hanging from a tree, pierced by my flesh for 4 days. Hanging from the cross, you know what I mean? It's not much different. But what had happened was he reenacted his dream the third day of this ceremony. And he told my friend that was sundancing, hey, would you fake passing out? You know, we think it'd be funny or whatever. He's like, oh, sure, yeah. Well, it almost worked. After he laid there and looked like a rag doll with no life in him, the sun dancers went up and started to drag him to the pole that's used, a tree in the ceremony, and they're going to strap him to the tree. That's when I stood up, and I was having it almost breaks me up talking about it. Excuse my language. I will tear this effing place apart. Not on my watch, you know. And I was going into the circle, and one of the grandmothers almost tackled me and offered me a glass of water and said, drink for him. And they had taught us, you know, the people that are participating are not drinking water for 4 days. So on the outside, every drink of water you get, you're supposed to give like prayer, but it's nutrients of that water to the person that you're giving it to. So I did. I drank that lemon water, and then when I was done, she handed me another glass, drink another one for him. I know now she was just running interference. I was responding to illusion as if it was reality. They had set me up by telling my friend to fake passing out. And, but by the time I drank the second glass of water, I was still entering their territory. When I got there, my friend was back up dancing on his feet. You know, that time had passed of him faking passing out. And so what I've learned was, if that Dark Messiah, if he can't prove that he can get every single person to enter his territory, because what Chief then told me, he said, what you experienced is the trickiest way the dark have to get someone to enter their territory, and that is love and compassion. Isn't that interesting? He said it's almost like coming across someone drowning in life's quicksand. The way to help them is not to jump in with them. The way to help them is to find your own solid footing and reach out a helping hand or throw out a life buoy, whatever you need to do. And he went on to say, like, they were trying to get this one gentleman, because mind you, he comes from a dark seat as well as a light seat, and he will see if he can get you to give away your energy and your I am away to an illusionary outside source. He said this one gentleman, they had been trying to get him to participate for years, but at this particular ceremony, his friend had got cancer. And they said, will you dance for your friend? And he said, yes. And he said, then we had him. Isn't that messed up? So that brought down, mind you, the end of the Mayan calendar was December 21st, 2016. I was brought to the ceremony in the summer of 2016, calling it close, right? Down to the nitty gritty. And once these Michigan artifacts that's written in ancient Hebrew says that this battle between light and dark has been going on in the last 7,000 years. The Dark Messiah has been in control of planet Earth. And at the end, the good Messiah, which I don't, you know what, man, I don't think, even if you're homeless on this planet, you're still divine. And I don't consider myself, you know, any greater than anyone else. As a matter of fact, the Anunnaki said, you got to beware that when this stuff starts coming up, it could bring these ideas of guruship or messiahdom. It said, never forget the acorn is no less significant than the giant oak it will one day become in Creator's eyes. We all go through cycles of evolution and we're all special. But I don't like the word Messiah. And look at what Jesus even said. He said, don't put me on a pedestal. These things I do, one day you'll do an even greater. You know, it's not, if that seems to go right over people's heads. But in these clay tablets, it said, if the good one is going to arrive, and they won't know who he is, but he's going to arrive with a bruised heel, meaning, you know, you're gonna have the shit kicked out of you. Like I said, I've had my face shattered and have it wired back together by Team Bad Cop before I did my first interview. And I just, sometimes it almost took me down, but sooner or later I would just find the strength to go, how about screw you? You know, and fight through it. So I showed up. They weren't able to trick me in. And so after all of this, what I learned that the tablets say, these are 6,000-year-old ancient mound builder artifacts that are written in ancient Hebrew and ancient Egyptian hieroglyphs. It said, if the good one, so I'm not using the word Messiah, if the good one shows up bruised and the dark one is not able to get him to give his energy away, the gig's up. This acceleration plan ends. No more accelerating of dark and light energies for mankind. We've made it, because if one of us can do it, all of us can do it. And that the dark would be imprisoned for 1,000 Earth human years, and the control over mankind and being under their thumb would subside. And so I can tell you, the Dark Messiah, he didn't trick me. Almost did. I actually look at that grandmother as the one that saved humanity. You know what I mean? By running interference, stopping me, because I was going in, probably in a million other timelines I entered, and it didn't end well. He's been imprisoned for 1,000 years of Earth incarnations, and we would enter the golden age for mankind. And but I could tell you afterwards, I didn't know why, but he was visibly very upset with me. And he came up to me and he said, if you didn't have that mutated blood, we would have had you.
All right.
And, sorry about that, you know.
Yeah.
I know that's just some deep stuff. And you know what? I was not religious in any of, like, before all of this. I'm still not. I am not religious in any way. And that's why it's so weird to be put into the position of having, they told me Inky was not my name. That's a title. It's, you know, N is Lord, Kai is Earth, Lil is Sky. So I was Lord of the Earth. My brother was Lord of the Sky. Those aren't names, they're titles. Ea is not a name, it's a title. Ea, in the most ancient Native American First Nation language, Ea means grandfather. And it's not grandfather like my grandpa, it's grandfather over, you know, the geneticist who helped create Homo sapien. They said my name's always been Michael. That's my true name. It's not Inky, it's not Ea. And this gets back into St. Michael, right? St. Michael and Mary's ley line, and the 7-pointed star being
Archangel Michael. It's got something to do with Archangel Michael as well.
One more time.
Archangel Michael. Archangel Michael.
It's the same, one and the same. Archangel Michael, Saint Michael. It's all one and the same. So that, you know, that I can really, yeah, my name's Michael. You know what I mean? Because it is. But I was known in Tibet as Maitreya. Many names, Ptah in Egypt. And the Native American Indians, they knew me as chief corn planter who met with George Washington to teach him the ideas to create America, by the way, and what became the Constitution. I'd like to say they got it wrong. They're doing it wrong. You're doing it wrong. But corn planter was the one in the first treaty between the Native American First Nations and the United States is signed by George Washington, and it's called the Corn Planter Tract. And because they were such good friends and George Washington loved the knowledge that he was getting, because, we the people way of governance was not the way Europe did it. Where did they learn it from? They learned it from corn planter, because the Iroquois had united their tribes that had been at war for generation after generation, brother against brother, tribe against tribe, for a very long period of time. There's this individual that showed up from the Canada side named the Peacemaker. The Peacemaker was not his name as well. They wouldn't speak his true name. His name was Michael. But anyhow, he arrived and showed them another way. They called it the Great Law of Peace. And instead of going at things with the arrow, he showed them the olive branch. And then, so the Peacemaker, corn planter, Ptah, Inky, Ea, Maitreya, Michael Lee Hill. We're all, people ask me, well, I think we've all lived many, many lifetimes and we've all had many names, to the point that names become useless. I truly believe that what I am is nameless, but not voiceless. If I was brought before Creator and I'm floating in outer space and she's like, what's your name? Mike. She's not going to recognize me as Mike. I've had many names, but Chief said, though, I was given, after the Sundance and after being brought before the council, the grandmother said, Michael, you are the rainbow we've been waiting for. That all the human chakras, they emit light, but only when they're spinning freely do they emit light. And they emit light of the colors of the rainbow, from red in the root to purple in the crown. Red in the root, purple in the crown. All the other 5 colors of the rainbow through all the other chakras. But they only emit light that when you've cleansed and healed your chakras and they're spinning and emitting light. She said, to those of us that have the gift of sight and can see energy, you have become the whirling rainbow. And that's why too, I was given the name Rainbow Warrior Eagle, and eagle is Enlil's side, right? And the serpent is my side, Inky's side. As you already knew, I like that the symbol of Inky is the serpent. So imagine when the Eagle Nation vets and clears a person of the serpent clan as rainbow or clean chakras, you become the feathered serpent.
Right.
Eagle, snake. And then what Chief Blue Star Eagle, which
That is
was
the feathered serpent of the Sumerian times, isn't it?
it's all throughout history. You'll find when the bloodline went to Mexico, it's all about the feathered serpent. And now, after I got the name Rainbow Warrior Eagle by my brother at a ceremony, it was his brother, Chief Blue Star Eagle, who really filled in the detail and told me, like, rainbow is whatever it is in ancient First Nation language and so on forth. He said, now, when you pray to spirit under this name, Rainbow Warrior Eagle, that your spirit, your prayers will go to Creator with great enthusiasm. Said that spirit knows if you have 6 of your chakras clean, but let's say your root chakra is still dark and you're experiencing all these root chakra symptoms of being dark, can't keep a roof over your head, having all these survival issues. Imagine if all of a sudden spirit granted you all this extra manifestation ability. You're just going to go to what you still have a fear stamp on and manifest the crap out of it. And they said spirit's smarter than that, that point blank. It's like, and I like this analogy because it's not religion, it's not spiritual. Guess what? Every single one of us can become rainbow. it's going to be personalized, the way to clean our own chakra system. But mankind has not been given the tools. Do you know when you go through trial and tribulation in life, do you know what chakra it's illuminating? Have you been given visualization and meditation techniques to help in clearing that chakra? And that's why, have you ever heard of Heart Math? The organization called Heart Math. Is it
How do you spell
familiar?
that?
Heart Math is actually another group. You can Google it. They're a really big organization, but people will know it was the work of A.R. Borden. When I was brought into that group, these scientists found out that the heart has a much bigger electromagnetic field around it than the mind. So they wanted to see, well, what effect is the heart having on your physical experience and world? And it became what's known as Heart Math. So during my being tutored by A.R. Borden, we were getting data from the Heart Math Institute and all this, which is, people don't even know. I can tell you, have you ever seen the movie Thrive?
Yes.
Thrive, if you look, was made by Liquid Buddha. Well, look at Liquid Buddha was created by the ACIO to bring forth Wingmakers in time space DVD of all the graphics and whatever. People have no idea that the Thrive movie, which is fantastic. If anyone hasn't seen it, please go to YouTube and watch it. It's available for free now. But that is a Liquid Buddha production, and Liquid Buddha is the Wingmakers.
Oh.
The Wingmakers created that to be able to communicate sacred geometry and physics accurately. So it's interesting to me, like with Heart Math, I got to Heart Math through A.R. Borden, but my wife is a cosmetologist and cuts hair. So she was sent to a weekend school by Heart Math, because you can imagine, if you are a cosmetologist, a hairdresser, your first client, you got your hands all over their crown chakra too, maybe that person just lost their husband, and you're dealing with that energy. The next person, their daughter just had a baby. So so they would teach them, the Heart Math people, to go back, and they had biofeedback mechanisms to monitor their breathing and their heart rate. And it gave them instant biofeedback and the visualization and meditation tools. I can tell you what's happening is the same technology. First of all, isn't it weird that the ACIO contacted through Heart Math myself and my wife, unbeknownst? Like I'm getting to the point, I know there is no such thing as coincidence. Also, I gotta say, I was really into martial arts growing up, and in my neighborhood was this master Guy Savelli, and I studied martial arts under him. Then when I'm doing an interview with Bill Burns from the History Channel, he tells me with the remote viewers, he said, "Oh, do you know that the remote viewers, they brought in Master Guy Savelli to teach the special agents of the government mind over matter techniques and stuff?" I'm like, "Can you say that name again?" And it was Guy Savelli. And I'm like, wait a minute. So A.R. Borden brought Guy Savelli, who was my Kung Fu master in the 60s, to teach special agents. I think A.R. Borden had a network out looking for those with extended sensory ability. And I don't think any of this stuff is coincidence anymore, but it makes me feel like too, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
I know what is meant to be will be, right? Press has put up his hand, Michael.
Yeah, we've got a really good question that is a nice segue that Michael's been talking on, and this is from Ashley. Currently, there's a lot of pain, confusion, and anxiety as a nation or as a world, as a planet. And part of it is dealing with living in the past and entering a new level awareness.
Yeah.
What can you say to help these people get through this anxiety?
First of all, The only thing that's real is the present, is the moment point. Anything else is illusion, whether you're dragging yourself in the past of thinking of, if you're in the moment, you're going, well, I wish it was this. Oh, this is happening again. Or you're in the future. You're like, oh, what am I doing next week? You've missed your only moment of power to change anything, and that is your present moment. Everything else is illusion. So you need to train yourself to be fully present and aware in your moment point. And if, we all do it, you start to drag yourself out. You know what? You could do it in your cell phone, man. You know what? If you're stuck in your cell phone, a UFO could come right in front of you and you're not going to see it. You're stuck, anything that pulls you out of the moment point. I think that's also why it's so important, music and all of this, because music teaches you to, you can't be a great musician without being in the moment and listening to your bandmates simultaneously, so that's one thing, if you're totally constantly pulling yourself out and reliving past events, and if that's where you put your mental energy, guess what? It's going to recycle. Thoughts create reality. So you'll go, let's just take the example as if you're prejudiced, and then you go out and you experience getting mugged by whatever race it is you're prejudiced against. You'll see them right. You're not right. You're just experiencing your own mental energy reflected by a loving universe. You could have just as easily chose love and experienced that. All the pain and darkness. So like what I said is in the end, both sides, good cop, bad cop, went to the sidelines. Not saying they can't whisper in your ear, because they certainly can through the pineal gland and try to get you to come one way or the other. But live in the moment, see the beauty that's in the moment, focus on things that enlift the human spirit. Knowledge, right? Music, nature, get out into nature, man. Hate to say and be a hippie about it, but go hug a tree. It will change your attitude.
Yeah. Also, Michael, I think it's the disappointment comes from the unfulfilled expectations, and also ego is the biggest obstacle to spiritual growth. Isn't that right?
Yeah, but the ego is what forms the personality. That's why we're here, is the gift is you. What you get to take now into higher realms and unfold is crystal. It's your ego state that forms, your likes and dislikes. And if it runs amok and takes control of the show, that's bad. But the ego is not the enemy. The ego forms the individual. And the individual is the gift of all of this thousands of years of us incarnating, because now we're in a time that we start to evolve very quickly back up into source. And we get to take us with us. And that's totally related and wrapped around our ego.
Mhm.
So it's not the enemy, but it's the enemy when we allow it to take control.
Yes, absolutely. On that note, I've got to say that time's running out again, Michael. We have John on the last presentation.
We'll have to do a part
We-
3.
We have one question from Maria.
Okay.
35 years ago, frequency were recorded from space and converted into tones, and this resulted in a wonderful, delicate yet powerful concert. My experience through yoga practice, hearing tones in the spine, hearing colors, but very rarely so far. Mother Earth is a living being, like hearing a young woman singing. She has made the request for higher evolution. The planet will become more crystalline and eventually a diamond planet. Do your frequency contribute to the upliftment, or could they interfere?
They're totally lined up with it, because as I was saying, the sun is 8,640 miles across. The moon is 1,080 miles across, I believe. We are living in a 432 base reality creation. So the tones that come off the planets are going to be tuned to light because everything is made of light, and 432 squared is the speed of light within 1% accuracy. So I totally agree. I know David Sarita is very in tune to taking these frequencies from the planets and creating technology that transmits them for, you know, health and benefit. I think this is something that mankind needs to even start looking into. You know what a fidget spinner is, right? Imagine you had a fidget spinner that emitted a 432 frequency. There's fun things that we can do with this. Imagine putting big things that put out 432 around lakes. And, you know, but what's happening with Elon Musk and the 432 frequency encoded in crystal and being brought to the moon, it's going to be shining down forevermore. And yeah, I'm glad she brought that up. I'd like to say the universe is being sung into existence, you know, and obviously it would be very beneficial to figure out what those frequencies are, and they're all 432 based. And the Anunnaki has been trying to guide us into this forever. It's in the Kali Yuga. It's encoded into ancient cultures. Who's the guy that did the Power of Myth? Oh, Beans. My dog wants to say hi. I can't remember his name that did the Power of Myth and all about. Anyhow, he had come up with that the most mythical number throughout all of humanity was 432, because it's been encoded through every culture, through Kali Yugas, through time cycles, through how we calculate time, to everything. And it's almost like they encoded the way that we even track time to lead us into this knowledge that would bring mankind into a new golden age and a new form of energy. And
Oh, Michael, Galia has put the name there for you that you've forgotten. Joseph Campbell, is that the
that's
one?
him. Yes. Joseph
Galia,
Campbell
yeah,
had said the most mythical number that he had found throughout all culture of all of mankind was 432.
Yes. Yeah, I was saying, okay, really, I'm so grateful, Michael, for being here with us today and for spending so much time sharing your experiences and your thoughts and everything that we really
Well, this is
need to
perfect
know.
timing because I think my dog's telling me she needs to go out. So how's that for perfect timing?
Perfect timing. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Michael. We'll catch up again another time. I'm sure we'll be able to get you back here to continue with whatever we need to know from you. Thank you.
Ignore that
everyone.
man behind the curtain.
Yeah. So
Thank you.
I would like to thank Penny Bradley for introducing Michael to me. Penny Bradley, if you are listening in or watch this video, many, many thanks to you. And we've got, as I said, we've got many.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Right, Michael. Thank you. Take care. Bye. So there being no other business here, I'm sorry we didn't have much of questions for you. So we will adjourn to the next session with John Kane, our very own R&D, the second group's member, presenting the subject of sacred geometry and the other things that he wants to talk about as well, which is in the agenda. So I think we can stop recording now, Pontus. Thank you so much,